Hey to you all. It's always great to see your smiling faces. And I love these power hours because we have so many smarty pants in this community that are subject matter experts in areas that we don't all share subject matter expertise in. So I'm very excited. We're gonna do kind of like maybe a little bit more of a fireside chat with Danielle and mixed in with whatever questions you guys have got for her. So Danielle is a confrontation expert, which I know is a subject that most people, uh, I mean, just absolutely like confrontation is probably the thing that I hear outside of public speaking is like, the thing they fear the most. People hate confrontation and do everything to avoid it. But I think most of us on this call, maybe all of us, have been in a leadership position at some point in our career. And we understand that, whether you call it confrontation or you call it courageous conversations, they're so necessary. So you have to be willing as a leader to have those. Otherwise, I think you can't really be an effective leader at all. Um, so anyway, Danielle, thanks for agreeing to do this. I guess let's start with kind of how did you get into this business? Give us a little bit of your background and kind of how you got into this particular subject and became a subject matter expert in it.
So I did the corporate route for about, I don't know, 20 years. I really tried to stay in it and I couldn't do it. And, I ventured out and I had a jewelry line for about 5.5 years. And then I went back in. And then at a certain point, I'm like, I just can't do this anymore. So having never even worked with a coach, I thought maybe I should be a coach because I was that person who everybody would talk to. And I just thought it would be a good fit for me. And it turns out that it was. So 10 years ago is when I got certified. And throughout the years, I would hear clients say to me that they're bad or scared of confrontation. And when they would say it, I did not understand them based on the conversation we were having. So I started to pay attention to the kinds of things they were talking about. And I realized that it was about communication. It was any difficult conversation that they needed to have. I'm scared of speaking up. I'm scared of being direct. I'm scared of asking questions, setting boundaries, saying no instead of yes, saying no instead of yes when you want to say no, caring too much what people think about them, like these kind of things, because you're kind of confronting yourself in that kind of a situation. So because as a coach, I don't know how many of you out here are coaches or work with coaches. So many people don't even know what a coach does. And so I was like, okay, confrontation, I'm just going to call myself an expert because I am very comfortable doing all of those things that other people are not, that are not comfortable doing. And I understand the discomfort because it's not like I've been like great at it my entire life. I was raised in a very direct home, but there were certain situations where I wasn't comfortable, like presentations that falls under public speaking falls under confrontation. And so once I was able to kind of like get that additional 15% that kept me from being 100% comfortable,
Mm-hmm.
I understood I just understood all of it. And I understood the feeling of liberation that you have when you're not scared to talk, basically. So that's where, and it's provocative. I mean, I'm not going to lie. It's literally people, no one really knows what it means, but they like it or they think they know what it means. And so that's a good thing with regard to conversation about the work I do.
So so as somebody who's got probably a little of different DNA, because it's not something that you shy away from, and also probably a little, it's nature nurture. Also, grew up in a household where it was just, more common to be direct. Um, how do you empathize and relate to your clients who either don't have that innate DNA or didn't grow up in that environment, and they really, are very, very fearful of confrontation?
Right. So there was always a part of me that in certain situations where I wasn't comfortable, and it always felt the same. It always felt like there was fear, and there was sometimes I would leave my body. Sometimes, it, it was just replaying things in my head. And so even though and even when I have been direct, it was uncomfortable for me very often,
Hmm.
because it's not necessarily, when you're a direct person and you're 15 or you're 20 and people say you're intimidating, and you're like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like I'm the one that's a little bit scared right now. It's like it was just something that I felt uncomfortable around. Even speaking up felt uncomfortable for me. So with regard to clients, I can empathize also with the feeling that I have from them because I'm
Hmm.
highly intuitive. So I can feel their feeling. And so, but if we go to like the root cause of why this happens, it's not like you're like 25 and you're like, I'm scared to talk to my boss. It's not,
Hmm.
it could be partly that, but like what happens is when you're young, very young, you are told, women often are given the message to not rock the boat, not, you want to be nice, you want to be all these things. I didn't get that memo. Like I didn't get the, when I started to hear people say they want to be nice, and I'm like, what does nice have to do with it? I never understood it. So, it's something that I can feel when they talk about it. And it's just, oh, sorry, I completely interrupted myself. So fear. So someone gives you the message that it is not okay to ask a question. Stop asking me questions. That's a ridiculous question, something like that. And all of a sudden, as a 5-year-old, let's say, you are then, with no understanding of why you shouldn't do that, you know that that's not something you should do. And that feeling that you have when someone punishes you and all you're doing is asking a question is very confusing. And so you stop doing it and you create a coping mechanism instead. The coping mechanism could be just not doing it. The coping mechanism could be people pleasing. It really depends on what the environment. I actually think it's environmental, although I did have a very direct parent, and the Jews like to talk a lot, but it's, and they were direct, and we're New Yorkers, but like I do think that seeing that was very helpful to me. But I didn't get pushback, and a lot of people get pushback and then they don't know what to do, and so they acquire these coping mechanisms. And fear is the fear is responsible for all the things we don't do in life.
Hmm. How do you, what are the steps that you take when somebody comes to you and says, this is a problem for me?
Right.
And maybe it's different depending on the modality, like maybe it's public speaking or maybe it's, feedback on job performance or whatever. But what are the steps that you take them through to get them more comfortable?
So awareness is the beginning of all healing. You have to know what's going on for you in order to notice it and then work from there. So when someone comes to me, so I'll give you an example. I had a client who had to give presentations all the time, and she more or less blacked out during them. Like she would go into the presentation, she would sweat, she would very self-conscious. She walked out, she didn't know what she said. And so think about that, first of all, with what's going on with your nervous system. Like the fear is so strong that your nervous system is like, I'm going to die,
Yeah.
basically. So the way we would work is I would have her understand when that feeling started, because it's not only in that one instance, it's always kind of there and then it gets amplified. So we would kind of think about, okay, so what's happening for you when you're not in front? Like, when does this fear start? And so it's kind of a three-pronged thing. Someone comes to you, tells you you're going to have to do a presentation, and then it's kind of like there's a kick in of something and there's a fear of it. It could be 2 weeks away. So you're scared. And then you prepare and you prepare and you prepare, but you're scared. You're scared all the time. And then you go in, you don't remember she doesn't remember what she said. And then she walked out and would beat the crap out of herself because she thinks she must have messed up. And anything rational doesn't matter here. It doesn't matter at all. So the thing that we had to do was was for her to understand that this evil voice in her head that's telling her all of these things that are wrong with her are going to happen. They don't exist just in a silo when it comes to confrontation, when it comes to public speaking. And so there's a series of exercises that we kind of figure out on our own that's applicable to that person. Everybody responds differently to different things, but it's really important that people understand that there's nothing wrong with them. This is just something that is getting in the way of their lives that first they need to understand that too. Like, you're not broken. You just have a fear. Let's figure out that fear and let's work at, minimizing it so that it can go away. So it's a story for each individual. It's kind of different, but the most important part is awareness. How do I feel? Why do I feel this way? Kind of like checking in with yourself. So, at the root of confrontation, you're confronting yourself first.
Do you do any, with new managers back when I was, a chief revenue officer and I had managers that were sometimes managing for the first time, I would try to get them to reframe things, to think about, the disservice you do to people when you're not upfront and honest and
Right.
transparent, and when you don't have those courageous conversations. And it's kind of like my philosophy on performance reviews was, why in the world would you do a performance review once a year, once every 6 months? Like, if you're having open, honest conversations with people on a daily basis, like they're going to know exactly where they're performing well and where they have deficiencies, and shame on you almost if they're shocked that they're getting this news. So you're really doing people a favor, and you're doing them a disservice if you don't. So I don't know, is that a part of what you do?
Giving feedback, is that what you mean?
Reframing it to see it as like you're actually hurting the. So we don't want to give people feedback. We don't want to tell you have spinach in your teeth because we're afraid to hurt your feelings.
Right.
But we're really doing a disservice to you by not doing that, because who wants to walk around all day with their fly down, or with spinach in their teeth?
So you just said because we're afraid to hurt their feelings, right? So that's a feeling. That's not a thought. It's a feeling that becomes a thought. So
Mm-hmm.
if we're talking about that, let's start with that. I'm uncomfortable doing this. It's important that you understand why you're uncomfortable. Like, what does it mean to you when people say, I don't want to hurt someone's feelings? I need to be nice. What does nice even mean? Like, it's important to define these things that you want to be, that you don't want to be. Well, what does that actually mean to you? And most of the time, there's no answer to that question.
Right.
Someone said to you, however many years ago, you need to be nice. They never explained it. You just need to be nice. So then you go, I need to be nice. And you learn that not rocking the boat in some way, like, it's kind of convoluted, but the reframe, of course, right? Like, so you're basically taking well, what if you looked at it this way? And that it can be enough to work with some people for sure. Like, I had a client once who was like scared. She was more junior and she was scared to speak up in meetings because what if I said the wrong thing? She said. So I said, what if you say something no one's ever thought of before?
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, oh, I never thought about that before. And I said, well, there's many different ways to think about the same thing. So I think with some people, reframing can be like a light bulb moment and it just takes off. And I think that
Yeah.
some people, depending on their belief in the situation, that takes a little bit more time.
Yeah, I don't know if I read it or somebody told me this. This is eons ago, but somebody said, or I read it, that clear is kind. And I thought, Boy, that's so true. Like when you're clear, meaning you're going to maybe say something that is difficult for somebody to hear, but it's actually kindness. It just made me think differently. And kind of that was always running in the back of my head and made it much easier for me to have, I call them courageous conversations with people.
I've
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's very important to, so if I'm sitting in front of you and I'm not saying something, right? There's something I want to say. I want to give you feedback. I want to tell you something and I'm not doing it. And I'm trying to figure out a way to do it that's nice or where it's not going to hurt your feelings, which you have no idea what that actually even means. You're not present in that moment either. So there's a lack of connection that's going on in that moment. And so, for example, this came out of my mouth accidentally once. I was on the phone with my sister-in-law who can be moody, and we had a few months break, and she calls me and she's like, how are you doing? And I'm like, I'm a little scared to have this conversation. It just came out of my mouth. It's not like I was doing this work yet. And I thought, oh my God, that was so true. Right. So it was like that's how I felt in this moment. So cut to the conversations. It's very, depending on if it's a personal conversation, it's different than professional, but you a lot of reasons why things can feel off is because two parties may not be in the room together when they're having the conversation. And one party is hearing something that isn't being said. And so checking in with conversations can always be good. But it's like, I'm direct. I could say, listen, I'm a direct person. I'm a direct person. And I want to make sure that this is something that you can understand. It depends on, I play the room when I talk. Not everybody receives information. Like I know when I talk to you, you're not going to like twist what I have to say, right? I know that. But like some people do. And sometimes I suggest that people check in and say, is this landing for you? How is this landing for you? And all these things. But it's a style that people have. Everybody has their own style. I might start off a conversation saying, I don't know about you, but I'm uncomfortable, something
Mm,
like that. And so it's a vulnerable thing to do for sure if you're not comfortable doing that. But yeah, I agree with you 100%. Honest, you're clear as honest.
yeah. Lindsay, I think you had something.
Yeah, I just was saying I've never met anyone who if I said your barn door's open or your fly's down, that they got offended. They are always grateful. And in fact, it happened at the retreat. And the person that I told, he's like, how come no one else told me this? I don't know how long I've been walking around like that. And, same with spinach in the teeth. If you're like, hey, you got a little something, you don't have to be like, hey, you're shitting your teeth. Like that's a different tone.
Right.
But most people are pretty appreciative. I don't want to have spinach in my teeth or lipstick on
Right.
my
But we
teeth.
walk around in a world where we let the emperor walk
Yeah,
around with no clothes.
yeah.
And that's not that's not a good thing. I don't know who it was for. We're going with Kimberly.
Scott went first. Go, Scott. Go.
I, I,
She's
I,
only being that kind because she's
she's
snacking on
eating.
something.
Yeah, she's
Right.
chewing. I can see
She's
it.
only That's the only reason why, let's be honest here.
Yeah.
Other than that, go ahead.
I like that you couch this all as you almost need to do an internal audit, right? This self-awareness level. And it really does come down to fear a lot. And I think there's another dynamic that's interesting, and I'd be interested in your opinion on this. A lot of times in a conflict or even giving simple feedback, the person giving the other person feedback is actually more worried about their overall performance than in the actual feedback itself. Meaning they spend so much time in their head about how do I deliver it? How do I do this? I got to say the right words. What if they cry? What if they don't cry? What if they do? And it almost loses the authenticity of the feedback to begin with. And I've seen this play out, and then the feedback doesn't hit right because the deliverer was so worried about their own performance. It's almost anti-coaching, where the coach is worried about their performance and not the receiver, not the coachee. And it's such an interesting dynamic when you see it play out. And you're like, I get it now. Like why this is so difficult, why this fear thing is such a convoluted thing, because people are fearful of how will they look giving that feedback to others. you know.
Absolutely. And, as a coach, one of the best things that I was ever taught was to say, can I make an observation? Right. So that's something that you're not giving someone, you're actually, if you couch something with, do you mind if I make an observation? No one's saying no to that ever. And then you basically say whatever you want to say after you say that. And because they're not on guard like that, but you're exactly right with regard to, so you're the person giving the feedback, and the person giving the feedback could also be terrified. So we have two terrified people in the room, neither of whom is paying attention to the other person. They're just self-conscious in that moment. And so, when I coach people around interviewing, I say, I'm like, you're there to interview them too. Like, this is not a power dynamic here of you want this job and you're below this person. It's like you want to kind of be balanced like this. But yeah, I mean, it's performance anxiety, if you want to couch it that way. It's how am I going to do? And am I going to be punished by my boss if I give the wrong kind of feedback? And how, depending on the organization, and so the person you're giving feedback to is kind of just this object that is causing you a lot of fear right now. Well, the person's not causing you the fear. You're having a reaction to the situation that is fearful.
Kimberly's done with her snack, so she's.
Hey, it's only 9:30 here.
I know. I'm just being me. I'm just being a jerk.
It's fine. That's fine. Hi, Danielle.
Hi.
Nice to meet you. I
Nice
sent
to
you
meet
a LinkedIn connection request. So you just spoke to, I think, exactly a little what I was thinking around, because I do my own flavor of work with folks around when they're having fear-based responses and how to kind of come back to a more present, aware, connected place. I loved your comment about, may I make an observation? I think that was super potent, because that's really different than saying, may I give you some feedback? So I just really appreciated that comment. But what I was curious about, because I've definitely experienced this, where you have an interaction with someone and the other person is in a very activated, kind of fearful place. And then they walk away from that interaction with something as truth that isn't what you said or did. And then the next time you come back to interact with them, they're interacting through their perceived truth, which isn't what happened from your side. And so I'm curious to what extent you've experienced that with folks, and what you suggest when that happens.
So you just said that that they're activated, right? In that conversation that they're feeling this way. Is that what
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
so you need to bring it up then.
Yeah.
So that's where you kind of like, people don't know that they're activated. If you're in a reactive mode, you're not there anymore,
No,
right?
right.
You're in a trigger. And so if you who can see things and is intuitive, I'm assuming, and you notice that there's something going on in your way, you could say, why do I feel like something's happening here? I don't know if it's me, I don't know if it's you, but I'm feeling a little uncomfortable. Are you? Right?
Mhm.
Like, it's kind of like, I'm going to wake you up. It's kind of like when you go to a restaurant and the waitress is being a total, not a nice person. And
Yep.
you can easily say, are you having a bad day?
Yeah.
And that person could yell at you because, if you don't point me, but they don't know they're in a bad mood. They know that they were triggered, but they don't know that they're carrying it over into this now new conversation. So that's what I do. Like, I had a client once who kind of had a big reaction to something I said. So I said, what did you just hear me say? Because I knew it wasn't what I said. I knew she was reacting to something she heard. Right? There's an adage, what I say is about me, how you hear it is about you.
Yep.
So what did you just hear? And they won't know, but that's okay, because that can open up a conversation.
Right. Now I'm with you in the moments that I know that I'm present to what's happening, and somebody else, a across from me gets activated, I will say I'm reflecting right now on an interaction I had with someone where that person got activated, I got activated,
Yeah.
and then I tried to be like, okay, I think we're both in a place that we need to pause.
Right.
But regardless, the other person walked away believing something, to your point, heard something which isn't what I said, but they've now walked away as if that other thing is truth.
Right. So you can go back to it, when you talk to them the next time, and bring it up and say, listen, I don't know how you felt during that conversation, but something felt a little bit off to me. I'm not sure that what I said landed for you. Do you want to, I'd like to revisit that if that's okay.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
there's no time limit on revisiting anything. I have clients that say, I missed my chance. I had this conversation and I thought of the great thing to say when I walked away. And I'm like, you can come back a day later, a month later, a year later, and you can bring it up.
Right.
You just have, it just has to be important to you, more
Yeah.
important than your fear, So does that make sense what I just said?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you are, what I'm really appreciating when I hear you say that is the relationship matters more to me than the fear that got activated for each of us. And so let's come back to the relationship and what we each need in the relationship. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're helping someone when you do that because they don't know, most likely, because now you're the devil, right? Whatever you said, they hate you now. So they
In
have
this
to know that.
interaction, I'm definitely the devil.
Danielle, I want to go back to something that I think you said before, and I was like, I want to understand that better. And I may have misheard. I think you were saying something like the difference between personal and professional communication. So I see them as kind of like the same thing. Like I'm pretty direct. It doesn't matter whether I'm having a conversation with a friend, family member, or whether it's in a professional setting. So I don't see the distinction, but I don't know. Do you think there is a distinction, or?
I don't see it either, but I do think that let's take an example. The example that flashed in my head was you're an SVP having a conversation with a manager, right?
Okay.
And you're feeling uncomfortable, right? You're feeling uncomfortable having the conversation. It's not a great thing. It's not advised. I wouldn't have a problem with it, but the dynamic in a corporation, let's say, is for you to say, I'm feeling uncomfortable. I don't want, whatever it is, it's an emotional thing. I personally don't have a problem with this in any capacity, but I think that there are people within an organization with a hierarchy that might be less comfortable saying something that's more vulnerable with such a level discrepancy. So that's
Yep.
kind of what I meant. Like I'm all for I talk to you, I talk to the deli guy, I talk to, every single person in a very familiar way. That's just my style.
Right.
So it really is about figuring out, okay, so if you're not comfortable saying this, what are you comfortable saying? But you're still you, and you have to find the thing that you are okay saying in your way.
Right.
So thanks for asking about that.
I was thinking of I recognized this a long time ago, and I think it's why I became very comfortable with confrontation, is the anxiety that we hold on to by not having those conversations is so much worse. I had this guy, his name was Roy Young. He was my director of client services. And he's super talented guy, like crazy talented, but he was always afraid he was going to get fired. Not by me, but by so I reported to the CEO, who was a lunatic, but whatever.
Right.
And so Roy would always be in my office, like, I think Leo's, mad at me, gonna fire. And I'm like, well, just like go in and talk to him. And he was like, what? But every time he would do it, and then he would see me because there were times that I felt like, I needed clarification of where I stood on certain things with him. and I would just march right into Leo's office and I'd say, like, what's the deal? Like, where are we at? And I knew, then I knew, and I didn't, but people, like, by not having those conversations, you
Yeah.
are going to live for weeks, months, and sometimes forever with this like underlying anxiety of not knowing. And that's why, and even there's probably some people on this call right now that know, like, people get mad at me a lot, which is shocking to think, but people do get mad at me quite often. And I always call them. Like, I want to talk about it. I don't want to like just hope it fades away. And I've just learned, like, for me, it's such a better way to handle those situations, even though I know, like, I don't want people to be mad at me. I don't want people to be angry with me, but I'd rather just like rip the band-aid off and just like let's talk it through. And I don't know, it works really, to me, it works very well.
Yeah, I mean, 100% what you just said. It's the same for me. And so you know what you want to say because you don't have all that fear in front of you. Like, because when you're like cloud, when there's fear cloud around you, you're lost in emotion. And so you can't mostly be accurate in what you're about to say. That's when you made me feel this way and I can't, but like there's a lot of that can go on. But like I agree with you because one of the things that I talk about is if you don't say something and you don't say something and you don't say something, you're pushing down. It's like a French press. And you're carrying that energy around with you. It becomes all you can see, whatever the thought is, it just gets in your way. And then one might explode also, but mostly it makes you feel like crap.
Right.
So it's like recycling air in your body. It's like get the energy out. It's not amplified if you do it after the first time. It's hugely amplified if you don't do it, and it's 100 times, right? So you're basically not saying something to that person every time you talk to them. You are not saying something. So you're not saying something is there, right? There's something you want to say and it's there, but you're not saying it. And that is, you're not present in that moment. People can't be present when they're doing that. They want to say it, they're resentful. I can't believe, and I want to say this and that. So yes, I 100% I'm on board with what you do. I believe that to be the healthiest way to handle it.
I also think too, I mean, the best leaders are the ones that when you fall down, when you say something bad, when you've offended someone, owning it and saying, hey, I did something wrong. I screwed up. I said something that I think offended you. And I could tell by your face, I could tell by your energy, I can see it now. And I want to fix that. I want to tell you I'm a work in progress. I make mistakes, but I'm sorry if I upset you. Not I'm sorry you feel that way, because that's bullshit. But like, I'm sorry that I upset you. I think that really helps so much in building relationships, and it shows some vulnerability and some guts.
Yeah, I mean, I would start before that and ask them if you did also, because there's an acknowledgement that you were paying attention
Yeah.
and telling them, which if you're intuitive, of course, you know, but like, I think, did I say something that offended you? I want to talk about it that's how I would start. But I just think that, yeah, if it's there to say, and I say also, there's something I want to say, like if it's a difficult conversation, I suggest that you could say, there's something I want to talk about. I'm not quite clear on what it is yet. But if you could bear with me while I find my way, you know, I would appreciate that. And because the worst thing you can say to someone is, there's something I need to talk to you about. Like, that's not a good way to start a conversation. And so if you say, there's something I need to talk about, I need your help. If you can just wait and let me figure it out while I do it, that person's totally open to that. I need your help.
That's a
Again,
great way. That's a great way. We need that like in the chat because I'm not going to remember that exact line. That's a good one. That's good.
because you are asking them for help. You're asking them to listen to you.
Yeah. Yeah, we need, I don't, and no conversation that started with "we need to talk" ended with something good.
It's like someone says, I need to talk, and everybody just holds on and braces for what's about to come out. And,
Right.
and someone go, oh, yeah, it's nothing bad. It's like, okay, we'll change that then. Don't say that the next.
Hey, Danielle, I wonder what advice you've given to people. The context is this: most employees never find themselves at the top of the organization. So most of us have grown up in subordinate positions, and maybe some of us get to the very top. What advice would you give someone who comes to you? Because this is a question that I've been asked several times, and I'm always curious of perspective here, about how to mentor up, how to give advice to your boss, especially when they're not the most receptive boss, I'll just say. What advice do you give for them to, be able to provide their leadership, their boss or or their superior feedback, or, hey, something didn't sit well in a meeting, speak up. What do you talk, or what do you do to encourage them, a subordinate?
Well, a couple of things you could try are in the beginning, I want to learn what your communication style is. Like you need to learn what someone's communication, and you could ask them, how does, I have some thoughts about something that happened in the meeting. It kind of felt like you wanted to say something, and I would love to hear what that is. Or I saw, when we were having that conversation before, and whatever happened, you have to kind of like, you have to couch it in a way that you're not accusing someone of doing something, and you're not, you're not bringing them out. You're kind of having it be a together thing. It's like, it seemed, the word seem, it seems like all of these different things, but that's where coaching, it's not a, it's an this is what confrontation is all about. It's about figuring out your voice and how you deal with conversations that make you uncomfortable. How do you feel about people giving feedback, or whatever word that's better than feedback? You ask that person, is it okay? I had some thoughts. Like it really depends on the person and the situation, but you figure it out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I've been to. It's figuring out your language,
Right.
but also having enough tact to understand maybe your boss's language too. And you never go at it with a you approach. It tends to be more questioning, may I speak, can I provide an observation? Would it be okay if I offered something here? So you're still giving them power, even though they're sitting in
Right.
potentially a place of authority, which is comfortable for them. Um, and even the hard ones, still want to kind of feel like they're in control of the conversation, even though somebody else is maybe, knocking on the door with some recommendations for a better way to approach something. So I'm kind of stuck in that same spot, and I don't have a lot more variance in advice that I give on that.
Well, also, sometimes you can't say something. Sometimes your boss is a narcissist.
Yeah,
Like there are certain times when you have to read the room. You have to develop an ability to see what there is to see, so that your agenda, like, why do you need to say something? Like very often people say things, there's no reason. Like what, when I have conversations with people and they want to say something, well, what do you want from that conversation? Well, I want them to apologize. I'm like, well, no, you can say something, but you can't decide what the outcome is going to be.
yeah,
So if you're having a conversation because you want to express yourself, because that's important to you, that's a value, okay. But that person doesn't care about no, right? But if you're waiting for an outcome, that's not a reason to say something.
yeah.
So you don't know what that's going to be. Not attaching yourself to an outcome is really the best way to go in life.
Yeah, and you can't control their behavior in the end anyway. And so if they choose to go down this complete narcissistic path, I just say, hey, that's probably time to disengage. And because you're not going to necessarily get there. Um, I will say, I'll add this. There's a kind of unwritten rule in the military that You can say the words "with all due respect," and then you're allowed to say whatever the hell you want after that to anybody at any rank, So, when I would speak to a 4-star and say, "Ma'am, with all due respect," she knew I was about to speak some truth, and it may or may not hurt, but it's kind of one of those organizational unwritten rules that it almost gives me a little bit of a pep talk that I am going to get this out and at least lay this on the table so that we can discuss this, or I can make this observation and she or he should listen to it. They don't have to like it. I still may get chewed out, but at least that gave me my opportunity to say something. So got me past fear is what it did, you know?
Yeah, and I think that we can choose whatever that is. I mean, that doesn't necessarily fly. With all due respect, also usually means in today's world, I don't respect you at all. Like
Yeah, it
that's what,
can be condescending. Yeah.
yeah. So it's very different in the military. But yeah, I think that there's something that people can figure out that's their opener. That feels right to them.
Yeah, we almost use it as it's a timeout between two people. So we don't look at it as condescending. It's actually kind of brings a little bit of levity because it both parties know this is potentially going to be a tough um, sentence that comes out of the other person's mouth because they're fearful to say it and they don't know what I or somebody else is going to respond, to during that moment. So we use it as a professional tool to kind of get it out on the table. So
Yeah. Kimberly?
Well, first of all, Scott, I'm gonna echo your comment of like, if the writing is on the wall, you should disengage. I will say I at one point was working for who you would have classified as a narcissistic boss. I could see the writing on the wall that he was going to make CEO of the company, even though I was working directly for him. And so I arranged to get laid off in the next year because I knew that was just not going to be a good place for me to be. So sometimes that is the path. Okay, Danielle, I'm thinking actually back to that time that I was at that organization. So this was like 15 years ago. I was leading a team. Something happened to like my top performing team member. And I to this day, honestly, I don't know what it was that happened. But what I know is that suddenly she just kind of withdrew, like was like almost like not willing to speak with me, was kind of showing up, doing the job, leaving. Like there was a huge shift. And I remember struggling with trying to figure out how to say, hey, I know something happened. I don't know what it was. She didn't want to talk to me. I didn't want to put pressure on her, but I knew something was happening and it was definitely impacting the dynamic of the team. So I'm just kind of curious because you seem to have all these wonderful phrases. how you would, what you might say to someone in that moment. Because I remember like really struggling with like, okay, I have all these tools. I'm not sure what to do. I don't know, I don't want to put pressure on this person, but clearly something's happening and I don't know what it is.
So the point here in that was that you wanted to acknowledge that there was something going on. Is that what you're?
Well, I think there was, so, I mean, honestly, when I think back and I put myself in that time, in that place, as the manager, I was really wanting to fix it. And I don't know what, and I didn't even know what there was to fix. Like, I think I would have a different orientation today because today I think I would be a little bit more like something's happening. I don't know what it is. How can I support? Like, I wouldn't have
Yeah,
quite
I mean,
the same, I
I
wouldn't
was.
have quite that. Then I had an urgency to want to fix it, which I
Oh
think
yeah,
is kind of in the way
right.
of me being able to be with it. But I'm just curious, kind of like how you might navigate or coach someone to navigate that.
Well, first of all, like you just said, I would ask them what's their goal with this conversation? Why are they saying what? Why do you want to say something? And if you want to control it, right? I want to fix it. That is not the way to go because you
No, I
can't,
know.
right? But I'm just saying, like,
I'm owning the part of me that has been a fixer.
well,
Is
of
still
course,
some
but there
people
are
to be
many
a fixer.
reasons, right? So if you just want to tell someone that you see them,
Yeah.
you could say, I can feel that something is going on. If you ever want to talk to me, I'm here for you. Like that is it, right?
Yeah.
I'm acknowledging that you exist. I see you. And then you might be a safe space for them. You may not, but like,
Right.
that's, if you want to get it out, because I need to say something, because if I see something, I can't pay attention to anything else. So I have to acknowledge it for, I mean, it's for me, right? Like I'm doing it for me, but I'm doing it for me so that I can go forward and do whatever it is I need to do. And so that's what I would say to the old you and the new you. It's like,
well, what I'm hearing in that is, I see something that has shifted for you, and I'm here if there's anything that you want to share. And, um, yeah, I don't know what else you would say.
nothing.
Nothing else. That's it. Yeah.
No, more
Yeah.
isn't always better.
No, that's
It's
right.
like, it's literally what you want to say, right? So say what that it's right. That's the thing. Like there's no right way, there's your way. And so if that's what you have to say, you don't need to find more,
Yeah. 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 So,
in
okay.
my
So I
opinion.
can really hear that as, I see something has shifted for you. I'm here if there's anything you want to share.
Yeah.
Okay. That sounds good.
If
Thank
that
you.
feels right to you. You know what I mean?
No, well, it does. And I just, it's one where, I mean, I'm sure this is true of any of us. As I've moved forward in my career, occasionally there's some time where I had an interaction with someone that I was like, I know I could have handled that one better, but I'm not sure how. And that's one of the ones that stuck with me, because I was like, something happened there. And anyway, so yeah.
You're also human, so give yourself a break
Oh,
also.
for sure. No, I mean, but
No, but
I
you learn
like
from
that.
those, but you learn from those things. I do. Like it's kind of like I lived in Italy for a few years and I was learning Italian and I would replay, I was neurotic, but I would replay entire conversations to correct my grammar at the end of the day. I'm not, it's kind of like that, but more kind of like normal. I was hyper neurotic.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Of course.
I, I'm I'm almost afraid to bring this up. So Kathy knows this. I am an odd duck in the world where I typically like to run into the fire, and sometimes I like confrontation. And literally this morning, Kathy shared something with me, and it was one of those situations where either of us could call, but I knew it was going to be potentially confrontational. So I'm like, I got it. I'll do it, because I wanted to fight. Um, and now I have to have a follow-up conversation with this person. And I know that I know that they're very off base. And most of me like wants to just squash this person and get them to understand that they're not seeing things the right way. So it's like it's too confrontational.
So
So
it's a
I don't even
heat,
know.
what you're saying,
Oh,
right?
go
It's
ahead.
heated. You're feeling there's an anger in there. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it initially was like, okay, like this will be, yeah, I guess it's when I know that this is gonna sound super douchey. When I know that I'm right and they're wrong,
Yeah.
I'm like, let's go, bring it on. I
Right.
want to fight. And I know I could handle it better, but so it's more like I'm trying to win than I'm trying to smooth things over.
Right.
I don't
So,
even know if there's a question in there. Maybe I just need to see a
well,
therapist. I'm not sure.
yeah, I think that if you know that it's because you want to win, which is not uncommon, like sometimes I'll get caught in a conversation. I'm like, I don't even know what I'm trying to say here. Like it's ridiculous. And I understand wanting to be right if when you know that you're right, but that
Yeah.
doesn't mean someone else is going to be receptive. And it's like, okay, so do you need to smooth things over? Is that what you're saying? You need to do a follow-up?
No, well, I mean, we ran out of time, so we need to finish the conversation. Um, I'm pretty sure what I'm going to hear is going to be inaccurate. This person's perception versus reality, I think, are very, very different. And I guess I would like it to just go better than I'm anticipating that it will go, which is that I will squash what this person's saying. They'll feel terrible. I'll be like, well, I was right. And
Is that what you're looking for? Is that what you
then
want?
I've blown up this this relationship forever.
Or you could squash it by saying, I don't know how I came across earlier, but in case anything happened that wasn't great for you, I just wanted to acknowledge it. You're not apologizing. You're just bringing it up. And you're like, and I'd love to just be able to move forward.
Yeah, well, I think we're going to get into more of the. I mean, I'm not trying to be cryptic, but I don't want to out this
It's okay.
person. So we haven't gotten into the meat of this person's gripe that they have. But I know I'm 99.9% sure that this gripe does not have merit. They're seeing it in a very wrong way.
So this person doesn't know that they are, right? They don't know. And so you could, again, I don't know what the thing is, but when they start saying the thing that is wrong, if you want, you could say something like, we're clear, we have different points of view here. I'm curious about how you're seeing this.
Okay. That's good.
It's true. You both have different, you do, whether or not he's right or you're, it doesn't matter, right? It's two different points of view. And he won't be able to answer you, by the way, because that's he's an emotional state. Right. And if someone said that to you and you're in an emotional state, you're like, I'm hoping to win. Like, that's really like your thing. Right. So he's got that. So what you want to do is bring it to light without actually talking about the thing. The problem
Mm-hmm.
is never the thing. It's the thing behind the thing. That's the problem.
And Danielle,
Yep.
isn't that a challenge? Like it's hard for people to separate people from the problem at times. Like we sometimes keep the people in the mess in our head
Sure.
too
Yeah,
much and not the problem.
absolutely. Yeah. That's why you work with someone to figure it out. Because if you very often the people is you, right? It's not the other person. It's you with the other person. So you got to figure yourself out and go, what's the end game here? What do I want to have? What's the, oh my God, I can't believe it. What's your intention with the phone call? Like, what do you want to get out of it? What do you want to get out of it? And
Mm-hmm.
how do you want it to end? And then you know how to talk, you work accordingly,
Danielle, what you're saying that really resonated for me, and you just gave Scott that example. It was related to a note that I made, which was, if what you're wanting in the interaction is curiosity, then show up with curiosity.
Yeah, it's
Like if what
how
you're
do you want
wanting
to,
the other person to bring is curiosity, then show up and be curious. Like whatever quality we're going to bring into the space is almost like painting the space with what's happening. Right? If I come in with I'm here to win, well, that's a pretty confrontational, somebody
Right.
else is going to lose kind of thing. But if I go, I'm actually here because I'm curious to figure out what's happening and how we can at least have, maybe we have different points of view, but can we come away with the same understanding of those different points of view?
yeah, I mean, since we're talking about energy here, right? Your energy is a kind of anger, let's just call it anger for a second. Like so it's
Mm-hmm.
a very forward moving energy, right? You're going at someone. So you could say to yourself, ask yourself, how do I want to feel at the end? I mean, I understand that wanting to win and feeling angry is very
Mm-hmm.
invigorating. It is a driver for sure. But if you find that you're tired after feeling that way and you'd like to feel a different way, ask yourself how you'd like to feel. And then that in and of itself might kind of like bring it down a little bit.
Yeah. It's hard for me, and obviously I'm just anticipating all this stuff.
Sure.
What was I gonna say? It's hard for me to just listen to nonsense.
No,
And
listen,
I know it's gonna be just all nonsense.
I am so one of the things that I think defines a masterful communicator is to
Mhm.
shut the other person up, if that's the case. Like, how can I stop you from talking, saying ridiculous things, and not be a total dick? You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
you can do it. You know, you, I believe, can do it, right? This is something you think about. You're good with talking.
I
I know.
can do it. I
No, but
know.
like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's like if the goal is to make this go smoothly and keep him at bay, well, what do you need to do that? And get your anger out of the way. What's your goal? Like that, if that you have to have the goal at least going into the conversation. You don't have to. It could.
Yeah. No, I need a I
I
need a therapy appointment.
I find it also helpful to take a step back, kind of what Scott was getting at earlier about the problem, the root of it, and apply what I've used in the past from on a product development standpoint, right? So unrelated to confrontations, but asking the whys. So why is he coming with this confrontation? What is behind that? Why is that? Whatever the answer is. Well, why is he in that state of mind, or she's in that state of mind? And then you can do it on yourself as well.
Mhm.
Why do I feel like I need to win? Like, why? Right? It's a self kind of, it's a question to, you get the answer, then you ask, well, why was that the answer? Right? And you kind of work your way down to really the root cause of it, right? Those frayed nerves that are truly exposed, that are generating everything else and all the other energy and everything that comes out of that. And then you can tackle that straight on, and all the other stuff is just a reaction to that, those frayed nerves, or whatever that why is, right? That root cause. I find sometimes it's helpful, right? Because he may be on the other side saying, I just want to win. Well, just like you, right? And you're both not going to win. You're both going to lose, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, and there could be something going on, right? The empathy part of this and the confrontation, when you have that communication comes out, there could be something going on in his life that is just, he needs a win. And he sees this as his only, like, he just needs a win in his life, right? And I'm going to go at this thing and I'm going to win, and it's nonsense, and I know, but I just need to win, right? For something else going on, right? Or underlying cause that is creating that behavior, because it's nonsensical, right? And how they're approaching it, it's nonsensical. They have to understand it's nonsensical in some way. And so kind of maybe trying to get at that versus trying to win, or them trying to win, and see who kind of gives up first, right?
Right.
So
No,
I don't know,
it's
Danielle,
good,
if you
good stuff.
a good thought on that, or a better way to approach that, but that's kind of something I've tried to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's easier to read the other person when you're not emotionally charged, basically. So again, you have to figure out what your top goal is.
So I should let Kathy do this conversation.
I'll just give it to me. I'll have the conversation.
It's probably a lot smarter. I
I
shouldn't have
mean,
taken.
maybe, if someone needs to be right, that either has to be okay, or it needs to be diffused. It's just how you do it. And once you figure it out.
I mean, that sounded crazy, and I know we're out of time, but so honestly, so what happened was this person went to Kathy with a grievance. I'm like, okay, this sounds like a fun fight. Let me do it. I'll do it. And so he didn't come to me. So I think this person was shocked that I picked up the phone and called them. And I'm like, okay, let's get to the bottom of this. Like, I don't know what's happening here. Let's talk about it. It probably, yeah, I mean, as much as I want to jump into the fray here, because it, crazy part of my brain that likes that stuff. Kathy would probably handle this next part 10 times better than me.
Hey, Scott, one of the things I think about, if a relationship with the other person is still kind of going to be present in my life or on the line, I have to tell myself, I can't go in this with win lose.
Yeah,
It's got to be
I
win.
don't care really, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that's where we probably just see a little bit different. You know, like if I'm negotiating buying a car, I don't care about the other person to a degree, but I'm going in win lose. I'm going to get the best deal, regardless. But if there's a high potential of this relationship to be continued, to separate my feelings, I have to work on looking at this win-win, because I think I act more like you, and I just have to practice a little differently at times than what
Right.
I feel like I'm programmed to do. So it's hard for me.
Yeah, it's not to me, it's not a valuable relationship. So I'm like, that's where I could probably handle it very poorly, because I'm not invested in, like, if this is not a long-term relationship, I don't really care. Um, there's a part of me that's like, it's like when you want to break up with somebody, so you make up a fight because it's easier to break up that way. That's kind of how I feel. I'm like, I don't really love this person. And a good fight might just be like, see ya. I'm just being brutally honest. Um, so yeah, Kathy, you're up.
Well, so I would say, you said I would do it better than you, and I was just saying that I would do it differently than you. But part of that is my own baggage. I'm more afraid to say something more directly, with where you don't have that same fear. So it's not better, it's different. I mean, I like to think that
No,
I
but I mean, I
say
go
things
to
in
you
a
all
more
the time with,
diplomatic
like,
way.
because Kathy and I work very closely together on three different things, three different businesses. So I go to her on a regular basis and I'm like, here's the situation, like, here's what I'd want to say, like, how would you say it? And she always says it better. I'm like, it's never like, you know, it's always packaged better than the way that I would deliver it.
Is this guy looking for something from you?
No, I don't know. He wanted to complain and he chose to complain to Kathy. And I was like, okay, I don't really understand the whole thing. It didn't make sense to me. We needed to get clarification. It was just a matter of, does Kathy follow up or do I follow up? And I'm like, no, screw it. I'll follow up, because at the end of the day, I knew it's probably going to be a tough conversation. Kathy probably doesn't love to do that. I do. Yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean, I know you don't care because it's not a value, but like you could always say, what was it that you were hoping to get out of this conversation? And
I think he wants to trash somebody that I don't think is justified.
right, but if you ask him, he probably won't say that.
Yeah, no, that's true.
So he'll go, I don't know. I just feel like blah, 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 blah. And this person, this way, I understand, but what is it that you want from us?
Good question.
Yeah,
Great question.
that's really good. Yeah, because I don't know if he wants, like, does he want me to kick this person out? Which is
Right.
not going to happen. Um,
Because if you ask somebody what they
or
want,
just disparage them.
right. And if he says, well, I just hate that person, again, I understand that is very clear. What is it that you were hoping to get? And if he were to say something, which people would do, I want them kicked out, and you could say, well, that's not happening. What else is there? Like, what else? What is it that you would like? And, it's a way of holding someone accountable for their behavior.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
That's really good because I would have never said that. Um, I'll report back.
I'm curious. Let me know. You can say, I know what I want, but I want to know what you want. I want this to end. You know, it's clearly, like, you could say that to some people, not to everybody.
This is really good. Thank you
This was
for,
fun.
yeah, I mean, it's such, we all deal with this every single day in different ways. They're, yeah, it's a fascinating topic.
It is. It's like, it's, for me, it's like playing around with semantics and language, you know, like,
Mhm.
because I'm not attached to, this can be done really well when you're not emotionally involved. It's the best time because you're looking at the person behaving badly, let's say, in this situation, right? So if you don't feel anger, right, if you don't have your emotional stuff in the conversation too, you would have more access to something that would be akin to what is it that you're looking for.
Yep. I'm writing that down.
Thank you so much, Danielle. I
Really,
love the topic.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you.
Danielle has so up until now been a hidden treasure amongst us. So
Hidden no longer.
Conflict therapist.
I
I'll
love
come
it.
out from under my tarp.
Yeah.
Um,
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much, you
Thank
guys.
you,
Thank you for
Danielle.
listening.
Tab, good to
Thank
see you.
So good. So good.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. Have a great weekend, everyone.